Well, welcome to Watercolor Studio 42, and I did get this little winter scene started a little bit ahead of time today because I wanted to let the background settle in. Sometimes I work a little bit too soon, and so when I sort of make the background wet, like, you know, put a wash in first, what happens a lot of times is that I start to paint into that background before it dries. So I'm giving it a little bit of a chance to dry today. This particular scene is from a photograph from, again, all these calendars I get in the mail. You folks probably at home have the same situation with all the calendars that they send out. So what I did is I spliced this one in half, and I can get two compositions out of it. But I like this one here that's a little bit stronger, but I like the color the reflective color that's in the other half of the same picture, the photograph. But what I do like, and I mention all the time, is that I like to get sort of a zigzag, that diagonal movement in there, and that kind of lets your painting move a little bit. I'll show you. I'm just going to wet this a little bit more, get a little bit more. I'm using a combination of quinacridone rose and some of my darker blue, ultramarine blue. So what I do here is I put this soft wash in. Now, how you can get that sky nice and soft a lot of times, you wet the paper first, just with, you know, pure, clean water, if you will, and then let that soften in, and then you can always come in and work a little bit darker contrast, and to bring out some of the object. Now, here's where it gets a little bit sharper in through here. I'm just going to kind of show a little bit of the dark edge of the water along the edge here. And this particular scene made me think of a back road in Attleboro that I travel a lot, that old post road, and that goes up through towards North Attleboro. And it made me think of that, that particular area. There's a church there as you come out onto Old Post Road. There's a little church in the background, or probably a little bit. I adjusted it. I push and pull a little bit with my composition sometimes. I don't always work exactly according to the photograph. In other words, you can put things in that you may see, but you can also leave things out. And I think leaving things out a lot of times is more important than how much you put into your painting. And so that's what I do. I've got to a point where I leave a lot of things out. Now, in this particular picture, this one here, I like the idea of this zigzag that goes back. See, you can see it like an S shape or a Z shape. And that's where you get that movement. If I went everything straight across, you'd be going back and forth like a tennis match. And then if I did everything vertical, you'd be looking up and down like an elevator. I exaggerate a little bit, but you get the idea. And so what I'm doing here, I've got that soft wash for a background, and then now I'm just kind of putting in some of the darker shadows. Now, the background can be a little bit hazy or out of focus, if you will, and you don't have to get too fussy with that, but you do want to make sure if there's trees in the background that there's always a little bit of a darker shadow underneath. And I say trees, it could be any object. Always have a darker shadow around the bottom, the base of things. Okay, something like that. you can make the terrain a little bit bumpy, whatever. If I wanted to make this look more like Vermont or New Hampshire or whatever, I could always make the skyline a little bit bumpier, put some hills and mountains in there, which would be very easy. I may even do that before I finish. But for the most part, I'm thinking of a scene that's over by Old Post Road. And I think it's First Church, something like that. That's a typical New England, white wooden church. And then you get that dark area. Now, nothing you don't have to make the lines sharp edges. I use a combination of both. It could be some water out in there. There is a little brook that runs a little further down the road. And what I do a lot of times is I take and kind of consolidate a little bit of this to that, kind of pinch it together, whatever. Let's put a little line across here for now. And right here, this could be part of the road if you want. You could have a road in through here. But I want to break this edge up here a little bit, and why not have something breaking in over here? I'm making it a little bit lighter right now, but you can kind of work that a little bit darker. Let's put a little bit more blue. I'm using, like I said, a little bit of the red quinacridone rose, which is actually alizarin crimson. And some paint companies, they like to call it a different color, or the color by a different name. The quinacridone rose is actually alizarin crimson. Yeah, wait, make that darker. That's quite a bit darker into here. Need that contrast right in there. I usually try to decide ahead of time where the light source is coming from. In this picture, I think it is coming mostly from, I'd say, well, either or, but you could get away with saying it's coming from the left side more. Now, see where this is lighter? You can come back, put a little bit more paint in the water, and you can come in and give that little bit more of a contrast. You can paint right over the light, let some of the light color still show through, and just do something like that. Break that up. Now, like I said, you could have a little path or a road coming down through here, if you so desire, and you could actually make a culvert, where the water goes underneath the little road here and it comes out on this side. Maybe I might do that. Try it, see what happens. As you go along, you can kind of invent different things. Let's come back in here. Make this a little bit darker. Something like that. I'm using a 1-inch flat brush. I could go with a smaller brush. And I don't have to use a flat brush. But where I'm kind of cutting some cleaner edges here, it's easier to work, some of the horizontal lines back and forth, easier to do that. Okay, there we go. All right, now, the next thing is to put this one aside a little bit. Don't look at that as much. And pay attention to what we have here now, where you're going to be defining some of the contrast. Now, I can come in to this if the paint's dry, and I can indicate where I want to put like a tree. Just put a little vertical line there. Now, you want that background to be not flat, all the trees the same height. You want to kind of stagger it a little bit more. And so I might put a tree here, and then I see another tree in there, something back here, the center of that one. Now you can go further back into the woods. If you start the base of the tree a little bit higher on the paper. So you can kind of go back up into there quite a bit and create a little bit more distance. On this side, it looks like everything's further back, so you're just going to see the trees. All you need is a shorter line, and just put some of those lines back up into there. Now, what you're also going to see in the foreground is some of these blades of tall grass or bushes or whatever popping up in here. I just put them in with a pencil just to remind myself not to leave them out. And there are some little things along, in the woods. This can be snow. There's a lot of snow through here. Now, if you want to put like a building, like a steeple, just make a little carrot shape upside down here with a steeple. You can show the side, a little bit of a shadow for the opening where the bell might be, but you don't have to go into a lot of detail. Just maybe suggest a little bit of the roof, and then maybe the door, kind of in the front, center that a little bit. Window maybe here, window over there, and just keep the drawing somewhat just suggestive. I like that word, just suggesting things. And sometimes you're better off if you just suggest something rather than to try to get too fussy with it. The biggest problem that I or anybody else may have a lot of times is you try to put too much detail in. You try to put the nose and mouth and everything, and all you do is need to put a little suggestion of a shadow on one side of the head. You don't have to get fussy with everything. So that's what I'm just doing, just suggesting. There might be another little building back here that is like an add-on. We'll just stick something like that, part of the roof there. And if you want to put some cars parked in, I know there's a parking lot here, and you just put a few more things in there, mostly in the shadow. Now, here's another thing you could do too. To break this up in here, sometimes I put in maybe some fence posts. Maybe you could stagger a few posts along through there, just to break up this area down here. You get too many horizontals, everything spreading out. So the way to break that up a lot of time, you put some posts in there. You can have some bushes coming out of the corner there. You can do something here. This, sometimes I'm almost at a point when I'm drawing and into something. I say, I could almost leave it that way, but you do have to bring out a little bit more contrast. But sometimes if you do less, it's better than trying to do too much. Okay, so a little dabbling in here and there. The thing with watercolor, and I can't emphasize it enough, what happens a lot of times is people try to do too much. They try to do too much drawing with a paintbrush. And you don't have to. You don't have to. It's kind of more suggestive of things. Like, for example, I'm going to go with a little smaller brush now. This is a round, number 12. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Is that, like, I got some trees. I just put some vertical lines in here, but look what, make a tree jump out. That's all you have to do, wick of the brush, and, you got some trees in here. That's it, But don't feel like you have to go crazy and fuss with it. Just do it like a tree shape, bring your brush to lift it up so it goes to a point somewhat, and just put in some trees. Now, the tighter the trees are together, the less you see. So same way on this side, like these trees are just back in the background, so all you have to do is just put just a darker wash back here. If you want something else parked in the yard, like a car or something, just leave it white for now and let it go. But just suggest it. And same way front posts, you know, you just put them in like that, and you're building up your painting. I found a lot of times I try to put too much into a picture. I really try to get too fussy, and I should spend more time trying to be more suggestive of the shapes and objects. Now you have to show so much of information about a subject, like if you're putting a house in, maybe it's a chimney, maybe a window or two here and there, maybe some shadow on the face or one wall of the building, but you do not have to spend an awful lot of time getting too fussy. But if a building has some shadow on one side, you know, wherever the light is, just sort of just paint in the patch of shadow. That's it. You don't have to get too fussy with it. I'm just going to bring a little bit more paint, fill this in here. I'm kind of looking at this picture or this photograph and just kind of filling it in. Now, layering, putting one color on top of another, that's okay, but what you have to do a lot of times, if you want that particular color to lock in, you have to make sure the background's dry. If the background is still a little bit damp, then if you put something like that in, it may run. It may run. So what I do is just take the brush and wipe it off on my paper towel and just lift some of the water out, not as much water. Along the bottom shadow, that's always flat. See across here, when you make that darker, you can break it up a little bit, but that's always kind of more of a darker shadow in there. You can push it back up into there like this, push the brush up a little bit like that, and let it go. Okay. Now we'll go over here a little bit more. All right. Maybe a little bit of maybe just a little bit more emphasis on contour. Let's bring that out a little bit more. Kind of break it up. Same way up in here. See, you can hardly see this tree. The tree could have snow on it too. That kind of hides it a little bit. But you want to bring out a little bit more of the contour shapes here. Just a little bit more. Okay? Now if that goes too far, you know what I do? Just wet the brush with just and pull it out. See how you can soften that right out? Yeah, if you want to not have as much detail there. There's one tree in the picture that does have a little bit more detail to it because it's closer to you in the foreground. And what I do with that, you can fill it in to some extent. And later on, I just add some very fine lines in there. I don't maybe want that to show up as much, so I just fill it in. Just fill it in and make it look interesting, like it's, you know, a lot of trees in the background, more than just a handful. It's filled in with a lot of bushes here and there. Yeah, sometimes I leave some of these little light areas in there. That's okay. Highlight in there. Sometimes you can call them windows, if you will. Now, okay. Now, in places here, or in the water here, I should say, let's not look at that one too much. Put that over here. Over here, I'm getting some real strong contrast. So I'm just going to build this up in here. Now I'm using some of my ultramarine blue, but if you want it to go a little darker in a hurry, I just take a touch of Payne's Gray, stir it around in there. Let's see if this comes out a little darker. Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, there you go. All right. I don't want to make that too sharpy. Let's kind of break that up and make it more of a solid area of color. Right through here. Just pull that right in, fill it in a little bit. Okay. Now we haven't got into winter too much, but boy, we've had a few cold nights. And we have had some snow earlier on. The other day we lucked out, I think we had less snow, but you know, sometimes the ice is worse than the snow. Like you have a rainstorm and it freezes in a hurry, then you get that slick ice there. Sometimes not so good. And if it stays cold, nothing seems to melt too fast. Now, I'm going to come back probably a little bit later, and I got to put a little bit more that warmer color in here too. Whoops, there you go. Just get a dash of that here and there. I don't want to leave too many hard edges, so I just wash it in, blend it in. Something like that. Maybe if what you do here, you want to carry it over and do a little bit on this half your paper over in this area. Yeah. I may have to redefine some of this, just in places, not much. Sometimes I cheat a little bit and use a fine point pen. I do have a rigger in there that I use too. Very thin brush. Okay. All right. Let's see what I got in here. Eventually I'm going to just suggest a couple of little windows. I think I'll use a smaller brush if I do that though. Let's add some more color off in here. A little bit of a darker shade here. Break this up a little bit over here. Bring that out to the edge of your tape. That's another thing too. If you put tape around to make a false, like a matte, what you want to do is make sure that you paint right up to or have some sort of a contrast right to the edge. Otherwise, when you pull the tape off, it'll look like a bumpy edge. Okay, let's work down here a little bit more. There's not an awful lot of fussy work on this one, and I'm purposely trying to get to the point where I don't have to spend too much time doing a lot. More suggestive, put things in, but this has to be much stronger through here. Maybe add a little bit more of that Payne's gray. There you go. Let's bring that down quite a bit, right in through here especially. And I want this to be darker right in through here, go right out to the edge, to the tape. Right, just a little contrast there. That's quite a bit of blue in that, so I'll come back and put a little bit more Payne's gray into that, kind of tame the blue down. I hope. Yeah. Maybe a little bit more through here. Kind of make that a little bit quieter there. All right. Something out through here. Right to the edge. Bring it right to the edge. Now see in here, this is very light. So I've got to get some contrast in this area. Bring some contrast into there. And even along the bottom, I got to make that a little darker. That could be a snow in there, of course. I'm probably getting more snow in my picture. No, this has quite a bit of snow. I was going to say sometimes if I want to make a picture that has just a dusting of snow in it, I get a little bit on the heavy side. The dusting becomes 3 or 4 inches, you know, type of thing, which is easy to do. You make that and whatnot. Now, what there isn't in the picture, there's no fence post, and so what I'm doing, I'm going to be adding some fence posts in here, and sometimes I just use a little bit of my sepia. It's a very dark brown, but what I do is lighten it up a little more with some blue into that. Now the fence post, you can just kind of, well, you can start from the bottom and go up, or you can come down, start, and just put the same amount of pressure on there. That's kind of a wider shape there. Maybe I need a thinner brush. Okay. Something like that. Now, if certain things jump out a little bit, I take a paper towel and see how I can lighten up that fence post in a hurry. You can even wash some of that off of there if you want. Just pull that color back, make it look like maybe some shadow or something. There you go. Looks kind of blurry right now, but I'll doctor it up a bit. Now, let's see, fence post, a couple more. So a lot of times I have to go to maybe a thinner brush. If I have one, yeah, here's one hiding over there. Let's see what that does. Yeah, and you can add a little bit more, texture to the fence post. Have more of a dark side. And what really makes is when you put the cast shadow across the ground, makes the fence post really take off. This one got a little bit smudgy, but it's okay. Yeah. I don't want to make them look too thick. Yeah, you got a few way off here somewhere. Oops. There you go, blot that out. Okay. A lot of times I'll take a lot of white, you can take white paint and just touch up the fence posts, make them look like there's snow in them, type of thing. Now, how much detail do you want to put on that building back there? You might want to make maybe just like a little bit suggestion of the door, maybe a window, put something over here. Whoops, need a little bit more paint than that. Something like that, maybe a window or so here. You might want to put a little bit more detail up in the belfry here. Need a little bit more paint on that one. Just a hint. And if you want the background to show up a little bit more, the walls, sometimes you don't have to paint the walls themselves. You just make the background a little darker, and it makes the building jump out a little bit more. Put that window in there. Just give it a little bit more contrast in the background. That makes everything stand out a little bit more. Okay, a little bit over here, probably more shadow there. Just a little bit. And pull that out. If it gets too heavy, I just kind of pull it down. Just suggest you might need a little bit more shadow on the side here. And you might want to make the steeple itself jump out a little bit more. And put a little bit of an edging on there. Whoops, that's a little bit too wide. I think probably, you know, I might be safer to use my my liner. Or like I said, sometimes I just take a pen and just, or even a pencil, and just put, shade it with a pencil. I guess that might make it more than just a watercolor, but you can do that mostly with a pen. I would use though. Now, what else do we probably want to put in? Yeah, talking about liners. Here we go. Now, a lot of times when you do like a tree or a bush or something, sometimes you make sort of like a wiggly line, and actually it can be a little bit more straighter line. Like you can bring it out this way, lift up, but if you want to put a branch on, you're going to go back and just don't make it wiggly, just go out straighter like that. And if you want it wider, you just go over the bottom edge. If that's too strong, just blot it. See how you can make it lighter. Let's put a few more little things coming out here. Straight. They're like little Y shapes. Letter Y. And, whoops. I'm going too easy on the water part here. Okay, something like that. See the little Y shapes? Like something like that. And that kind of takes your eye up the street here. Okay. If anything jumps out too much, like even a door, if that looks too dark, I just wet it. Just wet the door and blot it with a paper towel so it doesn't jump out as much. If you want to show a little bit of the side, you can come down the side a little bit of the steeple. Just gives that a little bit more contrast in there. Let's see what else. Oh, I was talking about some of the trees too, especially a tree that's kind of close in the foreground. You can kind of show some of the trunk actually going up into it. I'm being overly cautious about not getting too much water in the brush here. Just go up like into that. Yeah, you suggest it. And there might be a few little limbs and branches that you can kind of show popping out here and there. I think there's another tree over here that could probably have a little bit more attention. Let's see, we got 1, 2, how about 3? Something like that. Put that in there. All right, now you could actually have something on the other side if you want to show the bank over here. Now, a lot of times farmers put up fences, and maybe the posts don't always stay straight. You know, they kind of lean a little bit. So you can kind of, and then you can have some wire running, or slats, you know, what do they call those things? Crossbars, or, that's a little bit dark. Let's lighten that up. How many posts you put in doesn't really matter, but what I was thinking of, like a crossbar, you know, double, whatever. You got to have something that's kind of takes you into the picture. And emphasis on taking you down the street here. Now, on this particular street, there's all sorts of houses down the road. I didn't put too many in, but you can. And another thing too, you might want to make these posts on the shadow side a little bit darker. Just gives them a little bit more oomph. Bring them out. When you do all this linear work, they call that sort of like the graffiti of the painting. It's like the finishing touches that you would put on it. I think we probably, sometimes if this line gets a little bit hard, I just take some of the edge off of it like that. And you can make a little more of an emphasis on the shadow across the ground here from all the posts, something like that. Same way in here. That could be a little bit of shadows across the snow. As you go along, when you're painting, if something you squint and look at it, if something doesn't show up as much, and that means it probably needs a little bit more contrast. So you can emphasize certain things, what it might need. Now, on the building, you want to show the roof up a little bit. You can make that a little bit darker shadow in there. If you want it, it looks like something else up in here. I don't know if I want to put a building back there though. It looks like it's too much on the side of a hill. But you know what I could do is just go back in there and make that more, fill that more in, so that looks like just some more trees back there. Just kind of water it out. Put a little point on it. Whoops. There we go. You can rework it. You can put more shadow in here and there wherever you want it to go. Now this probably needs a little bit more work over here. So sometimes I use a pen. You can use a permanent ink pen, and they have them in colors. So sometimes that's a lot safer maybe than trying to use a rigger, maybe. But you can certainly put more in there. It may need quite a bit of something else. Bring that out. Just to break it up in that corner a little bit more. That's a little bit on the heavy side. Make sure everything connects too. You can't have although lately, with all the wind we've had, you probably have a lot of branches blowing around out there. I don't know how many times you folks have had to rake your lawns, or even the driveway. But it seems like lately we've had to do a lot of extra work. I'm just kind of touching up here and there. Have to break it up a little bit more so it looks more like the really supposed to be trees in there. Something like that. Break it up a little bit more. Okay. Now I've noticed that the sky is a little bit on the weaker side, so sometimes you have to come back a little bit later, and you could add just a pinch more color. I'll use a bigger brush here, one of my big round brushes. What number is that? It's way up there. Probably a 30, 32. Now, if you want to add just a pinch more color, make it a little stronger over here, you can do that. I'm adding like a little bit more of that bright red, and that would really warm it up in here, coming out of this corner, like that. Bring that right across here. I'm using a round brush because what happens a lot of times is that with a flat brush you get too hard an edge. So maybe the round brush would help a little bit more. Put a little bit more. Now what you have to do too is take and add that color of the sky. Put that down on the snow. That's where you get into the warm and the cool. This looks like something else other than a fence post. It almost looks like a big stump there. Okay. Yeah, take some of that color and just kind of repeat it on the surface of the ground, the snow. Now, this still doesn't work good. See, there's too much white, too much of a glow around there. So I'm just wondering if I could put like a little bit more contrast in there, like in the sky more. And I don't know if that would help that or not. Just pull that back out, give something like that. And the more you look at the picture, you see what has to be done. But the big thing is to make sure you bring out more contrast. Bring out more contrast. Because, watercolor, when it dries, it gets a lot lighter. Let's put something else, break this up in here. A little bit more texture in that corner. And we need a little darker here, possibly. Let's see. I'm not too crazy about that shape yet. I think it needs a little bit more contrast. Now, what I was saying earlier too, you can put mountains in the background, if you want it to look like it's up in Vermont or something, or hills, hills. You can always do that. Take some of that out here. Some of these edges, you just kind of soften it down a little bit more. In the picture, in the photograph, it's really much darker. And as you go along, the finishing touches would be always kind of putting in a little bit more of the deeper color. See, it's quite a bit darker in the photograph over here. But I have to take some of the edge off here. It's softer. It's soft color. So you just kind of pull the edges in a little bit more. It's supposed to be trees, so break it up a little bit more. And might be a dark area like up in there. I usually do 1 and 2, 3 areas when I'm painting all the time. Now sometimes these could be figures too. You could have people out there walking. Almost looks like a figure there instead of a fence post. I suppose you could do that. All you have to do is put a little dot for a head and you get like a figure walking in the snow. So what else? Oh yeah, see where this white here, when you pull the tape off, you're gonna lose the edge there. So I just make sure I just touch up those edges a little bit in this corner, a little bit here. Contrast. We'll go over this a little bit more. See how that works. And let's say if something's too strong or needs building up, you can go back over that. This still makes me think of a figure. Have somebody standing over there. Let's see if I can soften that out a bit. I usually, you can take, if it's dry enough, you can take like a razor blade or X-Acto knife blade and just scratch a little bit of the paper and bring some of the white paper through. Or you can just take a little bit of white acrylic paint and just touch up spots here and there. Sometimes I spatter a little bit and make it look like it's a snowstorm. And if you got a little problem with something, if it doesn't look right, you put a little extra spatter snow to hide it. Put a little bit of a drift there. Okay, make that a little darker. Okay, now back in here, you can spend some time, and what I would do myself is just take a small rigger and see if I could get some of the details, the markings, a little bit more of the markings of the trees in there, you know, show maybe a few branches here and there sticking up, and make it look more like trees in there. You could take a blob of paint, and if you add like a trunk to it, it looks like a tree. You don't have to be too fussy. Something like this. Whoops, I don't want to go too far. I don't want to make too many odd lines in there. Just soften it out. Wiggle the brush around here. There we go. All right. Now, it's a lot of fun to do a winter scene. I always kid with a lot of folks. I'll say, well, you know, you do a winter scene, you don't have to use as much paint because the white of the paper can be the snow. And that's very true. If this looks too dark, see how that comes out dark? I take the paintbrush, put some water on it, and just reactivate the color and pull some of that out. Maybe pull it over here. If it looks too much, take some of that out. That happens a lot sometimes, you know, what you do. Now, I suppose I could be a little bit more daring and kind of put a little darker color around in here to bring out the building. And all it needs is just something that's a little bit more of a contrast. So you put something up against that. And you can make certain things show up more. Just on the side of the building or whatever. And just pop it up a little bit more. And if there's anything left over, or if it looks a little bit too scratchy, just wet the paper and you can kind of pull some of that out. Now, let's make sure we got all the edges here. Fill that in. Whoops, down the corner. Make sure up the side here. Just make sure the paint goes right to the tape. Right to the tape. And you can always take and pull it back in if you have to. Yeah, that looks okay. That's full. Right over here, a little bit more. That still looks like figures in there, but that's okay. We can doctor it up. I know what I could do, too. I could make that look like it has some wire. How's that? Whoops, pencil work. There you go. And put some wire coming through there. Yeah. I don't know if that helps, but that's one way of solving the problem. Just make it look like it's got more wire attached to the post. Let's bring this over. Yeah, connect it. A little darker through here maybe. That's the idea of it. And then if you want, you can take something else with a thin pen or a marker, and you can show a little bit more of the real thin branches on the, on the bush or whatever. You can have this go more to a point, bring it up into there. So that gives you an idea. You want some taller grass coming up through here, you can just put that in with a pen or something. And you get this, let's see, if I don't know if I can just color that in a little bit more. You lose the steeple, so we want to put maybe a cross or something on top of that. And put a few little more markings on it. Yeah, the building. And so now there's always something else to do or something that you think about a little bit later. And after it dries out, you know what needs to be a little bit darker. And what I've been doing lately, instead of trying to place an actual mat over the artwork, I've been just taping the paper itself with the width of the tape. This is a 1-inch tape, so you'd have a 1-inch mat around your artwork. I guess we can go across the bottom. See, that's why you go to right to the edge with the tape, so it kind of cleans up the edges. You could purposely leave it kind of bumpy if you want, but you have to be consistent. If you do it in one place, you might want to repeat it somewhere else. Here we are. Still a little bit wet there. Pull the paint out to let it dry faster. Here we are. Come up this side. All right. And got one more strip of tape across here. I guess we could pull it easier from this, catch it easier over here. Don't pull it straight. I just kind of pull it on an angle so you don't damage the surface of your watercolor paper. Now, with this, you can always put a mat on it. And what I would do, if you have a pen, a black pen or a thin colored pen, whatever, brown or whatever it might be, blue, you can still go over some of these details. I'll show you. I can do it with a pencil. I just have to bear down a little bit hard. But you can put in just some finer lines in here, see, to break it up, and maybe clean up an edge or something. Something out in here, a little bit more, whatever you want to put out there. You can just add more to it. In here, I would just go into here and just emphasize more of the branches that might be sticking through, especially the trees that would be closer to you in the foreground. Just to break it up, maybe make the trees go up more to a point into here. And break that up. Yeah, just kind of emphasize it a little bit more. Gives the building a little bit more contrast. And, excuse me, and if you want, you could have some more things coming up through the snow in the foreground. So that just gives you an idea how it works. Here's the original picture. I'm much lighter with my drawing than the photograph, and I can go a little bit darker, but I'm kind of running a little bit out of time right now. So what I usually tell everybody, hey, time out, huh? Brushes up, and hope to see you next time. Probably next year. Okay, it's not too far away. Thank you.